Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Steve and Cimino Says Boom Show issue 57.
Boom!
Hey everyone, welcome to Pop XP. And before the show starts, make sure to click that subscribe button and click the bell to get notifications when we go live and we upload awesome new content. And don't forget, if you can, make sure to share our stream on all your social media outlets. We appreciate it, and thanks for helping us grow the Pop XP channel.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Steve and Cimino Says Boom Show, issue number 57, and we have a birthday spectacular today. But before we get into that now, what do we got to do? Because we don't have a clue.
No one has a clue. No one has a clue. Everyone, you know what to do. This is a night of live streaming on the channel, by the way. So, as you may already know, click that subscribe button, smash that bell. This way you get notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Speaking of birthday celebration, I really hope Steve didn't forget the cake.
Oh,
It was on your to-do list, man.
I had a craving, so I ate the whole thing.
So, Steve, we have an incredible guest. First, I have to say, in all my years of doing this, he's turned out to be one of my favorite people. I mean, totally, and he is so underappreciated, but that's what this is all about. So, Steve, what do we got to talk about today's guest with?
You know, I am not being hyperbolic here when I say this. In my opinion, this next gentleman, the legendary Tom DeFalco, was the last great comic writer for me. Okay? Ooh. No one has managed to touch me the way he does with his stories. No one since. So for me, and I say this quite proudly, because unless someone can prove that they are, I am the biggest Tom DeFalco fan in the world, and I have been for many years. Okay, so to have Tom DeFalco here, where we can start diving in deep onto some of the goodies of his tenure as editor-in-chief, and then also we can dig into the Fantastic Four. What a show we're going to have today.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, what is it? Yesterday, obviously we're calling it his birthday special, but yesterday was his birthday. I think he turned 25, or was it 30? Was it 30?
Yeah, Ron Friend said he was 30.
31. 31?
Yeah.
31.
Yeah, he's got another 50 years of writing in him.
Oh, and we would love it. Without further ado, the man has had so many innovations in this world of this. Oh my God, I can't wait to talk to him. One of the most lovablest guys in the world, the one, the only, Tom DeFalco.
Listen, guys, you guys get to talk to Roy Thomas on a regular basis. He's a real legend. I mean, come on.
The birthday boy. How do you feel on your? I know it's a day after your birthday. How do you feel, Tom? How'd you celebrate?
You guys don't want to know.
Pasta and meatballs? No pasta and meatballs?
No, I had a Caesar salad. That was close enough. Yesterday was a work day. The only celebration I got to see one of my nieces go out to her prom, her senior prom, and she was all dressed up. And I have to tell you, I was not prepared for that. If any of you guys are fathers or uncles or whatever, you know when they grow up, it's kind of shocking.
Now, did you meet the boyfriend and all that stuff that she was going with?
I brought my baseball bat, but the boyfriend didn't show.
Well, the reason why I asked, I wondered if they were going to ask you if you knew anything about Spider-Ham. They were going to tell you about. They were going to ask about Spider-Ham. That never came up.
No, never came up.
Oh, look at that! Look, we got people in the hizzy all senior. Mr. DeFalco, before we go into it, I have to say this. You have. I tell people this, and it is still baffling to me because it is synonymous with Archie. You are, and I'm going to say it till the day I die, you have innovated the Archie Digest. And why that is so huge is that is synonymous with Archie because you know people, sometimes they don't even know Archie, but they know those digests. That innovation was one of the biggest things ever for that company. How the heck did you tell me how that came from your mind?
I stole it from Gold Key. Gold Key was doing digest first, and I saw the Gold Key digest, and I looked at it and thought this would be perfect for Archie. And John Goldwater, one of the owners of the company, I held the Gold Key digest in front of him, and I said, "Mr. Goldwater, I think we should be doing this because our artwork will reproduce perfectly for this." And he said, "Get out of here. You know, how can we sell these things? They're not going to fit on any racks. You know, this is a lousy idea. Get away from me." And 2 or 3 days later, he comes in holding my digest book and says, "I've got a great idea. We're going to do these digest books." And I remember Victor Gorlick, who was the editor there, turned to me and said, all right, kid, you came up with this mess. It's now your problem." And I
talk to people that don't even, Tom, I talk to people that don't even know comics, but they remember those Archie digests, and they're still, I just saw it the other day in a Barnes and Nobles. They're still around. They're so synonymous with Archie. I mean, it's crazy. Like I said, I know people that not even really that familiar with even Archie, but they remember those digests. That's crazy.
The digest is still strong. I actually have an assignment to write 2 stories for 2 upcoming digests. So
in Jersey, there was 2 6-foot tables of just Archie digests. And people flocked to it too. They were selling. They were cranking away.
Oh my God. And it was so good with like kids. For some reason, kids, like little kids, they gravitated to and they were almost like good shut up books, like the shut up toys, like, yeah. But it was just so convenient. And I remember when I was a kid, they were always like at the aisle before you would, you put your food on the bank. I remember could see like the racks of like the little Archie comics. They're right there. I mean, now, did you guys have a plan on where you guys were going to put those Archie digests in like the grocery stores and stuff, or who came up with that?
Yeah, that was the Archie sales manager, a gentleman by the name of Ben Cooperstock. He figured that he could pay a certain fee and get the stores to put him in the Reader's Digest racks.
Yeah.
So we co-op the Reader's Digest racks. It worked out. It worked out great for us. We were, pleasantly surprised that it actually worked, and it's still working.
Well, go ahead, Steve.
So, Tom, I always like to explain to people about the massive era where you were editor-in-chief of Marvel. Now, in my opinion, and I think it's backed up by facts and figures, I don't think any editor-in-chief was in charge of so much money pouring into the company within a certain amount of years. I think when it comes to the massive successes and huge print runs and just thinking of X-Men #1, 8 million printed, okay, we're dealing with an area of success where I don't think any other editor-in-chief is going to get close to that. And of course, you became editor-in-chief in 1987. You took over from another legend himself, Mr. Jim Shooter, who was a rather dynamic character, very strong-willed, and had his own way of doing things. And then, you know, here you are, you've been at Marvel for a while, you've done the writing, you've been in assistant editors and stuff like that. So if you can, go back with us in time to try and remember that first day when you walk into the Marvel offices and you have all of that weight on your shoulders. What were you doing? What were you thinking? And who was speaking to you?
You know, what was I thinking? An absolute panic. I wasn't prepared for it. Becoming editor-in-chief was never in my, game plan. When I first started at Marvel, I was only supposed to be on the editorial staff on a temporary basis because I just wanted to go back and be a full-time writer. And even when they offered me the job, I had to tell the president of the company that I was a freelancer masquerading as a staff person, and as a result, I was just going to try to spend my time making life better for freelancers. And he said to me, "Well, that's your job." He said, "You got to make money for the company, but you should be making life better for your people." And that's when I thought, "Gee, maybe I should try this job for a little while." I remember starting out. The first thing is I grabbed Mark Grunwald, one of the real unsung heroes in this industry.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to Mark, we're going to try something that they've never tried before. We're going to pretend that we're a real publishing company and come up with a 3-year plan. Because in real publishing, you have a 3 to 5 year plan. You're not ad-libbing every year. And I thought, it's time to act like professionals. So Mark and I spent a couple of weeks working out a 3-year plan where we figured out, one of the things I remember of it was we're going to introduce a book of teenage superheroes. And then in the second year, we're going to spin one of them off into his own title. And we made plans like that. Expand the X-Men line, because I thought, hey, this is our most popular line. We've got 3 Spider-Man books and 1 X-Men book, 1 New Mutants book. There should be at least 2 X-Men books, and Wolverine was our most popular character. We should give him his own title. Things like that. We wrote it all out on paper. And I remember at one point the president of the company heard what we were working on, and he said to me, "I hear you're working on this 3-year plan. Do you think it's going to work?" And I said, "I have no idea. We've never done this before. We're going to try it." And he goes, "All right, yeah, take a shot." And to our surprise, a lot of times it worked. I remember part of the plan was we knew a Batman movie was coming out, and in those days Marvel couldn't give its licenses away, so we figured, oh man, there's going to be a Batman movie, there's going to be a Turtles movie, we have nothing, we're going to have to increase our publishing, because otherwise we'll just get destroyed by the Batman movie and the Turtles movie. To my surprise, DC did not support the Batman movie in any way, shape, or form. And the Turtles people, they just 2 guys, they couldn't, increase their publishing. So when those movies came out and people were excited about comic books, they went to the stores. The only product out on the shelves was Marvel product, because we came out with a lot of extra stuff. And our sales, skyrocketed as a result of that. But that was, I always put it down to dumb luck. I think of myself as just lucky. God watches out for idiots and morons. So he's taken care of me over the years.
Tom, I think you sell yourself so short, because you also had the envision of the Marvel Masterworks, which was another huge. The digest and the Masterworks were those impressed me more than Spider-Ham. I don't know, but they just do. I love that. Tell me about the Marvel Masterworks. How did you like that? That's
This
incredible.
Idea of pure genius. All right. So I'm editor-in-chief for maybe 3-4 weeks. And the president of the company, I keep referring, Jim Galton, who was really a terrific gentleman, a terrific president, a pleasure to work for most of the time. And Jim came down and he said to me, Tom, if we don't make an extra $200,000 by the end of the year, we might not be around next year. We're going to have a meeting tomorrow to figure out ways to make extra money. And he says, do you have any ideas? And I said, no, but I will by tomorrow. That night I went home kind of, like I said, in a panic, my normal state, thinking, what are we going to do to come up with, making money? And I thought, ever since I was a kid and the first, comic books came out, the first Marvel comics came out, I dreamed of the day they would be in libraries, 10 issues of Spider-Man, 10 issues of Fantastic Four. And I thought, I'm not that original as a fan. I'm sure other fans dreamed of those days, as these comics and hardcover books. So the next morning, I spoke to Grunwald and I said, "Yeah, here's my idea for how we're going to make money." And he looked at me and said, "That's a genius idea. How'd you come up with it?" And I said, "Every comic book fan has come up with that idea. It's not a genius idea. It's such an obvious idea." And then I proposed it, and I remember Mr. Galton looked at me and said, "You're talking about changing our, making our old reprints, publishing them as a hardcover? Who would buy that?" And the head of our direct sales department, a lady by the name of Carol Kalish, said, "Pretty well every Marvel fan." And she supported the idea and said, "Okay, we're going to make our money." And
I remember the ad for that. It was the guy in the Spider-Man suit upside down, and he was reading the hardcover. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember. Who designed that? That's what caught my eye. It was almost like Electric Company, and it was just such a great thing to see.
I don't know who designed the ad. I was so busy trying to figure out ways to get it to the printer on time that I was not part of that. But whoever designed that ad, it was a great ad. The first versions of those books, we got them out of the house within like a month and a half. I look at them now and I think, oh man, the credits pages were so poorly designed and everything, but we got them out. Really? We published them on time.
Who designed the cover? Like, I remember that was crazy to see. Like, it had the dust jacket and it had like the foil. Like
the foil. Yeah. Well, I wanted the foil because I wanted, let's make these things look like they're really significant.
Yeah. It was great.
Go foil around it. The fans will think these are very important books. And I thought they were important books because I just wanted them on my bookshelf.
And they led to the omnibuses and think of what people collect today. It all started with you. I mean, that is such a great. I know all comic fans have thought about that, but you implemented that. That's genius, Tom. No matter what you say, I know you hate that, but it was so good.
Listen, I live with myself. I know there's no genius in this house. So
go ahead, Steve.
You can ask my wife. She'll confirm that.
Well, as one of the main beneficiaries of the Masterworks, because even by 1987, compared to today's prices, the books are much cheaper. But a lot of those big books were out of my range, and they were out of the range of a lot of readers. So suddenly, you know, for example, if you were collecting Amazing Spider-Man, you could get the first 2 volumes or a couple of volumes, and you could start at issue 50 and get the, you know, get the originals from issue 50 up. You didn't have to start at number 1, you know, and consequently, you know, with the books being printed in such a nice format, and, you know, with all of these people, doesn't matter who you are. You could have been a young teenager. You had access to these stories, which are legendary, historic, and in many occasions, very expensive. But now they had access to them. And of course, at the time, the Marvel Universe was far more cohesive in 1987 and 88. And people and writers were still using lots of continuity and stories and flashbacks to stuff that went way back. So now, I think it was, you know, yes, I think it was something that you didn't think of. It was something that was put on you. But in hindsight, you know, if someone's reading a story and it's like, well, flashback to Avengers 3. In the old days, it'd be like, well, we got Avengers 3. You think I got Avengers 3? Now it's like, oh, open up Avengers 3. There it is. That's our idea. So, again, it's a wonderful idea, and I'm one of the beneficiaries. But I wanted to talk, I think, the first major crossover that you did, was it the Evolutionary War? I think it was the first major one that you did, the one that went in the annuals, that went all the way through.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it began this whole series where you were bringing, you know, the Marvel Universe together in these massive long story arcs, you know, covering so many issues. I mean, you had the Evolutionary War and Atlantis Attacks, which covered all of the annuals of that year. Was that a major headache, or was it like, hey, Mark, I have an idea?
Well, I think it was Mark who said, hey, Tom, I have an idea.
Ah, okay.
Because, you know, we were trying to figure out a way to make the annuals special again. Because the first couple of annuals all had big special stories. You know, Submariner finds Atlantis. We get the origin of Dr. Doom. Reed and Sue get married. You know, Spider-Man meets Doctor Strange. You know, the Sinister Six. The first bunch of annuals were all kind of special, but after a while, annuals had become like fill-in issues, and we thought, no, we have to do something to make them special. Because I remember, you know, sitting with Mark and saying, you know, that, you know, I wouldn't buy these annuals. So, you know, I want to make annuals that, you know, I would feel that I would want to go out and buy. And you know, I think Groening came up with the story is let's do a massive crossover with the annuals. And I went with it because I thought, you know, the good news is if you're into the crossover, you can buy the annuals and read, you know, read the whole story. And if you're not into it, you don't have to buy the annuals. You can just read your regular comic books, and it isn't going to affect it. So I thought, hey, you know, it works both ways. And to my happy surprise, the annual sold well. So we did it a few times.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I mean,
John.
those two stories set off the beginning. I mean, I don't even want to think about the organization and logistics of Acts of Vengeance, because that just went on forever, and 5 million books. And, you know, again, at that time, it just brought that cohesiveness to the Marvel Universe. And as a youngster at the time, I kept thinking to myself, wow, these guys really know what they're doing. They really, everything is coming out. The continuity, it's all flowing. It seems to have some sort of path, you know, because obviously we still had the sting. I don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, but we still had the sting of Secret Wars 2 in our mouth, okay, which was abysmal and crossed over 600 books. But now on the Acts of Vengeance, you know, we had all this great storyline, everything's going along. And I really think that because of, you know, your love of the material and your knowledge of the history, you're able to corral this stuff. So if someone came up with some strange idea and said, well, Captain America's wearing a pink suit, you know, calm down. Okay, that's not the way it things. And so for people like us, seeing this whole universe more cohesive than ever before, working like this, you know, I just want to let you know that what we thought was that there was these huge geniuses working at Marvel, somehow knowing everything and being all-knowing. Now, was it complete chaos behind the scenes?
Well, there was a certain amount of chaos. I'm trying to remember the one where with the Kree Skrull War that we did. I forget the name of that one, but
Galactic.
Galactic Storm.
Oh, Operation Galactic Storm.
Yeah, Operation.
That coordinating that was it was a nightmare. We had all sorts of people come in and we're trying to coordinate the story and that sort of stuff. And you put like 20 writers in a room and you're getting bombarded with so many great ideas. You try to figure out, well, wait a minute, this is only a terrific idea, so it's not good enough for this story. We're just going to deal with the great ideas, and coordinating that was, I'd like to say it was a lot of fun, but it was, the gray hair didn't come by itself. Acts of Vengeance, we designed that again to make things easier for the readers. Because if you're an X-Men fan, you just had to read the X-Men books. Because the story didn't go from book to book. Acts of Vengeance was when the basic idea was, every hero is going to fight a villain they've never fought before from somebody else's title. So again, you didn't have to read the titles you didn't like. It didn't matter. Or you could read everything. We tried to, always. Tell the fans that they should read everything, but but we also designed it so they didn't have to.
Yeah.
Good enough.
So Tom, I'm curious. Now, do you still stay pretty up to date with the current comic book industry?
No, not really.
No,
not at this stage of the game.
No.
The comic books today are not written for guys like me, and that makes perfect sense because anybody producing material for people who've been in the industry for 50 years, you're going to go out of business really quickly. So I'm not the audience anymore, and I know I'm not the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So
neither am I.
Yeah, well, if you're not the audience, you're not the audience.
Yeah.
I like a lot of action in my comics, and in my novels and that sort of stuff. I find a lot of today's comic books to be more like radio scripts than actual comic books, because you basically have heads talking and the dialogue is carrying the story.
Yes.
and I think that I like radio dramas, but not in my comic books.
Tom, I can attest to me and Steve with this. This is why we loved your Thor. You could tell you came from the school of Jack Kirby. Like, you took all that. And that was what was a blessing with we can't praise enough your Thor, but it was literally you and friends. Like, it was once again, I said it in the last time you guys were on the podcast, but it was a breath of fresh air of all that other stuff that was coming out. And what you guys were doing was just telling the classics. And it was so refreshing to see that. I freaking loved it. Oh, and I can go on and on about your Thor. I mean, like I said, people say Walt Simonson. I say Tom DeFalco. Easily. That was everything I wanted.
Did you hear that, Walt? Did you hear that?
Well, hey, I'm a fan of Walt's stuff. I love what Walt was doing.
Yeah. Oh.
And when Sal was on the book, gorgeous stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Listen, like I say, I'm just a very lucky guy. I got paired with Ron early. We approach comic books the same way. I've been riding his coattails for at least 40 years now, and I hope I can continue to do it. He's getting tired, but tough. He's such a great artist. Whatever ridiculous thing we came up with, he could figure out a way to draw it. And whenever he would piss me off, I'd just throw in an army in for him to draw. But like I said, I'm just a lucky guy because aside from Ron, I got to work with Paul Ryan on Fantastic Four and Herb Trimpe on Machine Man and Ron Lim on a bunch of things. J2, which was a comic book we had a pisser with, but it was
Tom,
odd.
I want to ask you this though. You were such a different dynamic from Jim Shooter. You like two different personalities, and you got along, and then you didn't get along and stuff. I want to know that transition into the editor-in-chief, and how did Jim feel about all that? Did he take it personal? I know you were kind of just told to go in there, but there's always and people with big egos and stuff. It can be, and I want to know that whole dynamic, like how, and even the company, how they felt, because you're totally a different personality than Jim.
Well, yeah. Well, Jim, Jim was a big thinker and had big ideas and had done a lot for the industry. It's hard to list all of Jim's accomplishments. I used to think that Jim and I were a good pair because he'd come up with great ideas, and I'm kind of a logistics guy. I would figure out how to make the ideas work. Jim, had some issues with the people running the company and the owners of the company and stuff. I don't want to get into that sort of stuff. And at a certain point, I could see, we were headed for the end. And I had always assumed that when they decided to make a change and get rid of Jim, they'd get rid of me too, because I was the number 2 guy. Sweep them both out, bring in new management, bring in, somebody new. So I was always prepared for, the day that the company decided that it was time to part ways with Jim, that they were going to part ways with me too. When they told me they were getting rid of Jim and putting me in charge, I was kind of stunned. Matter of fact, as I was walking to the meeting, totally unaware that where I was going, I had a big argument with Mattel the week before, and I thought the publisher, Mike Hobson, another gentleman and great guy to work with, said to me, "This is going to be a very unpleasant meeting." And I thought, I guess he's going to yell at me for fighting with Mattel. And he said, and I said, "Yeah, Mike, whatever it is, don't worry about it. Everything's cool." I said, you don't know what's happening. This is going to be really bad. And I thought, yeah, I guess they're going to fire me. And I'm thinking, well, I got plenty of freelance work. I'm good. It's only a temporary job anyway. I said, "Mike, don't worry about it. Everything's good. I'm going to be fine." And he says, "You really have no idea what's headed." I said, this has to do with Mattel, right? And he looked at me and said, "What does Mattel have to do with anything?" And I thought, yeah, I guess I had no idea what's coming. And when he told me they were going to get rid of Jim and put me in charge, I was, kind of flabbergasted. Because, like I said, I really wasn't prepared for that. I was getting ready to move to California and get into the animation business. It was a shock.
So how did Jim feel about that? Like, okay, was he already gone, or like, did he know you were coming in, or like, how did that all turn about?
They told me first, and then they told Jim. All right. They brought me out to a lunch, and then then we came back and they asked to speak to Jim. Jim, Jim thought, in many ways, Jim had always identified very closely with the company. He thought he was Marvel to a certain extent. And he didn't think anybody could replace him. And to be honest, I wasn't sure anybody could replace him. Certainly, I didn't think I could replace him, which is why I surrounded myself with smart people who, I surrounded myself. I had Mark Grunwald, and I love Mark. I thought he was great, but the only downside to Mark was that he and I approached comics the same way. And I needed contrary people. So I got Carl Potts and Bob Budiansky. And the nice thing about those three guys is I could ask them a yes or no question and I'd get three different answers. And it was good because, Carl would always have a different point of view and Bob would have another point of view. Because I was afraid that Mark and I would have, the same point of view too many times. And as luck had it, we did. But I thought it was important to surround myself with people who didn't agree with me and didn't approach comic books the same way. I thought in our publishing, we needed to have a wide variety of opinions and a wide variety of material so that we could have a wide audience. I thought if everything we did was the same, we would end up boring our readers. I used to tell the editors, an editor is just a walking opinion, and you've got to have an opinion about everything. And, you don't have to agree with my opinion. You just have your own and then convince me that yours is the right one.
But what happened when you and Jim saw each other? Like again, was that like got this big 6 foot, guy? Like, how did you? I want to know that. Like, did he?
Sadly, our personal relationship is not what it was. Mm-hmm. I wish we could, be friends again. I think Jim took it a lot more personal. But I think the fact that the company succeeded without him was something he was not prepared for. I got to live a fantasy. When they got rid of me, they had to replace me with 7 people, and the company went bankrupt 7 months later. So I got to live a crazy fantasy.
And as Steve said, Tom, when you took over, as good as Shooter was, you took it to such new. I mean, like you took it like. You put your foot on the throttle, and it probably, because I hate to say it, but when Jim was leaving there, like you said, he was probably thinking it's not going to last long. They're not going to do what I did. No, I'm sure that happened. Anybody would say that, but my God, he must have been like the numbers that were coming out, and you got Tom DeFalco with his balloons.
But a lot of that was, like I said, a lot of that was dumb luck. I was anticipating getting swamped by the Batman movie. So I felt we had to increase our publishing, and I also felt that I've told this to so many people in so many companies that the secret to publishing is you actually have to publish, and if something is succeeding, you just come up with more of it.
Yeah,
and when the public is saying, "Hey, I want more G.I. Joe," you come out with more G.I. Joe books. And people often say, well, the quality will go down if you produce too much. Well, was it Theodore Sturgeon once said, 90% of everything is crap. So, if you keep publishing more stuff, all right, you'll publish some things that aren't great, but you'll also publish more things that are great. And I thought, it was a good time to be a freelancer because, Marvel was hungry. We were expanding.
Yeah.
And luckily the market was expanding with us. Everything was going great.
Oh.
Up until the company, in its infinite wisdom, decided to buy its own distributor. And that's when things collapsed.
Oh boy. Go ahead, Steve.
Wow. Well, the funny thing is that, obviously in 1996, a couple of years after you had left that position, the world had to endure Heroes Reborn and all of that other stuff. But you were right there in charge during, I think when it comes to the history of comics, that period which led to the creation of Image Comics. So you had all these superstars, huge stars that were being able to produce books that were selling in the millions for the first time since the golden age of books. We were in this new golden era. Of course, we could get into the concept of that 1993 bubble and stuff like that. But we had this stable of well-known superstar artists that were selling huge numbers of books. And then all of a sudden you have, boom, they are gone. Okay, they're out. They obviously didn't get what they wanted to do. I'm just sort of curious. When did you get the first rumblings that something was wrong? And how hard did you try to keep these guys around with it? Was it just something that was impossible? A lot of people who are going to be watching this show are huge Image and that era fan. This to them is like, what in the hell happened?
Well, I first learned that something was happening. There was going to be some sort of big comic books sale at the Sotheby's, and a bunch of the guys who became the Image guys were in town for that. They were selling artwork, and the then president of the company, a gentleman by the name of Terry Stewart, and I was supposed to go to Sotheby's together. And around 6 o'clock at night or so, I realized we never made a plan. Were we going to meet here? Were we going to meet at Sotheby's? What's the story? So I walked up to his office, just to ask him, hey, where are we going to meet? And he was having a meeting with the guys who became the Image guys, Todd and Rob and Jim Lee, Mark Silvestri, a couple of the guys, and I knocked on the door. I said, "Listen, I don't want to disturb anybody." And the president looked at me. No, Tom, come in. We could use you here. Come on in. And I got into the meeting, and found out that these guys had a bunch of demands. They considered themselves our most popular guys, and they had demands. Unfortunately, everybody had his own demands. One guy said, "Listen, from now on, when I go to a convention that Marvel sends me, I should be, sent first class and you should pay for my wife too." And one of the other guys said, "Well, I don't have a wife, but you should pay for my entourage." And the other guy said, "Well, I don't have an entourage. I want this." And, they kept asking for all sorts of things, nothing coherent from the bunch. And Terry Stewart, Terry and I disagreed on many things, but, he said something that I totally agreed with. He said, "Guys, why don't you guys get together, figure out all the things you want, and give us a list? And once we have that list, we can go through the list and we can say we can do this, we can do that, and we'll negotiate based on that list." And I thought that was an intelligent way of proceeding because, otherwise we're just, ad-libbing. And the guys finally agreed to that about 3 hours later. So, my hopes for the 6:30 train now became the 9:30 train. I went home that night and realized I never got to ask Terry where we was going to meet. So I went to Sotheby's. And I get to Sotheby's the next morning, and there's one of the image guys who's explaining to the reporter that, he and his guys are leaving Marvel. And I hear this, him explaining how they're leaving Marvel. And I said to him, wait a minute. I thought you guys were going to give us a list. And he says, no. He says, that was kind of just for show. But we had to be able to say we approached Marvel and they didn't accede to our demands. And I said to him, hey, not for nothing. I don't mind you jerking Terry Stewart around for 3 hours. But couldn't you give me a signal so I could have gotten out of that meeting? And he said, yeah, sorry, we dragged you into it, And I thought, okay, well, those guys are gone. Monday we'll make a new plan. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, X-Men, once the big image stars left, did the sales on X-Men go up or down?
I would think it went up.
It did. Spider-Man, up. All the titles went up. Why? Because there was so much publicity about this stuff.
Yeah.
So as a result, when these guys left, it was one of the biggest booms. Again, God watches out for morons and idiots. Sales went up on all of those titles. And we kept chugging along. And, we did well. They did well. I will say, quite frankly, I never thought Image was going to last because I thought those, I thought the egos would clash. I was wrong. I'm glad I'm wrong. I think Image has been a great boon to this industry. The guys did well. They did well. They didn't all hold together, but the core of them did, and they've done great things. So I'm glad I was wrong.
I have a question for you though regarding that, like with the Image stuff and with the Marvel books at the time, when you started seeing their books come out, was there talk of how similar a lot of these Image characters look to already established Marvel characters?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So some of that stuff kind of annoyed some of us. Mm-hmm. That hey, they're going to go out and create all this original material, and yet they're kind of copies of pre-existing stuff.
Oh my God, absolutely.
And some of the other things that got me is, one of the guys I heard him giving a speech about how, listen, you've got to own your own material because otherwise you're always going to be in poverty. It says, I did it because I wanted to support my family because otherwise we were eating bologna sandwiches. And I'm thinking, well, you must really like bologna because I've seen the checks you're getting. And I wish I was getting checks half that size. Some of the guys, when they originally left, it was, they're taking such a gamble. But they had to do it because they were barely making a living. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, barely making a living. You have a different concept of a living than I do. And then later on, they changed their stories about how heroic they were because they were the best paid guys in the industry, making fortunes, and still they gambled their future. They handled their PR very well. And,
But I think also, Tom, it sets up quite a contrast, and it relates to you personally, because people like me and John, when we read your product in Thor and in Fantastic Four, we are getting a more traditional type comic, a slam bang action, what we were expecting of comics. Whereas when you did open up or try to read an Image book,
Oh.
It was just a series of splash pages with nonsensical dialogue. And it was just literally tripe. So you had all of these young kids who were basically saying, okay, this is the future of comics. But at the time, I was thinking to myself, wow, that Fantastic Four issue, I've got to think about that issue for a couple of days now. My word, there's so much going on. You could open up an Image book and flick through 3 pages. And that's why, their whole superhero universe died. Their whole super universe is gone. And the Image universe and the Image publishing right now is completely diverse, and it's a good publisher and everything's good. But that original superhero universe thing they try to set up just flushed down the toilet. So you have 2 comparisons right there of a more traditional slam bang action way of doing things, which was like, wow, that's the way it should be done, opposed to this slick paper, ultra $1 more expensive book where you could actually read the issue in 3 minutes, and then there was like 400 pages of ads. Now that's the truth. I don't know whether you ever thought about it that way. I don't think you ever did.
Well, I could see they were trying to do different things. They were approaching it from a much more visual way.
Yeah.
And I'm the old fart, I liked more the traditional way, but I thought, they're going to appeal to an audience, and they did appeal to an audience. A lot of the kids that started with those Image books, as far as they're concerned, those are that's the golden age of comics. And it took some of the guys a while to realize that writers were necessary.
Oh yeah.
And they did, and they came to that understanding, but it just took a little while. And whenever you're starting something out, it's not always what you want it to be. And it took them a little while, but they matured. And like I say, Image is one of the backbones of the industry today. So they went through their growing pains, but Marvel went through its growing pains too over the years. Every company does. That's, listen, I'm a New York Jet fan. We go through our growing pains every year. Maybe next year we'll win a game.
Yeah, it's funny how Steve said that, because I remember when they hit the shelves for the first time. I was in the throes of collecting comics. I remember picking it up, looking, reading some of the clunky dialogue, and I was like, like I put it all back. I wasn't impressed. I was never, I was always true to my heroes. I'm a guy that will follow the hero despite who writes it, despite who's drawing it. I still suffer through that, or I love it. So when you get the good stuff, it's good, and when you get the bad stuff, it's bad, and you just suffer. Just getting into new characters and once again, they all reminded me of just, oh, this guy is this guy, and this guy is it's so obvious who that is, and and they were just all kind of watered down. And once again, the print, hey, to each his own. And you're right, we see that today. The kids love that. The kids who grew up in that stuff, they love that. Hey,
they love it.
But Niall, weren't you one of those kids? Weren't you one of those kids, Niall, that loved all that stuff when it came out? I
did like some of the Image stuff, yeah. Yeah,
so
that was part of my time. That was part of my time.
Yeah.
But I remember though, I was there, fans of their work prior to Image being done, because I started reading while they were at Marvel still. So, with the X-Men stuff, the Spider-Man stuff they were working on, all that stuff happened. And then Image hit. I didn't catch on to Image right away. It probably wasn't until about 1994 I started getting more into Image, because that's when I actually started exploring their stuff more, because it was just, at that point in time, it was really thrown in your face. Like, they're marketing everything, and at least in my local comic shops, Image stuff was everywhere. And all the kids were just collecting Spawn, Wildcats. They were just collecting everything like that. Obviously, we're all still reading our Marvel and stuff, but these guys were different, right? These creators we were seeing on MTV, we were seeing them on other shows. They were like rock stars when you were a comic fan. where other creators, you know, Adam Kubert wasn't doing that stuff, you know, like things like that going on weren't the same. So to them, it was for the image guys, it was their books, but it was also like this weird experience where it was like, oh man, are they on tour? Like, it was just crazy how that was, you know. But you know, for me, it didn't last too long. And now though, in my career, you know, I'm good friends with one of them, very good friends with one of them now. And the others at least are decent acquaintances. So I have a lot of respect for those guys.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I would have
listen.
rather seen Tom DeFalco in the leather with the spike bracelets, and then I would have been, that's the rock star I would want to see.
No.
Screw it.
But the
They-
same
they
goes
would-
for Tom. I mean, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt you, Tom, but I mean, with what you were doing with Marvel, I mean, that was huge for me then too, because of you know, all the stuff that was coming out for me between 1988 and, you know, 1988 1992 was huge for me with Marvel. I mean, that's all I was buying at the time. So I mean, that what you guys did had just the same impact, I would say. For
Yeah, and again, Tom,
me
I
and
think
my
you also when it comes to creation of massive stories,
mhm.
when it comes to Spider-Man alone, that Maximum Carnage story has probably
God.
sold 500 billion issues, 9 trillion trades, 800 omnibuses. Okay, and then you follow it up with the Clone Saga, which has sold another 800 trillion things. You know, so
Those time were button fly with a new Calvin Klein jeans model.
yeah. So I always say, you know, and I remind people that there was more books shifted during that period, 1988, especially through 1993, than Marvel's ever going to shift again. And those stories, I mean, they had the video game, didn't they? Maximum Carnage had a video game.
Yeah.
Oh, those are some of my favorite games from my
And so
childhood.
it was the first time
Yep.
that people would come into the shop and they'll be like, yeah, I played the game. I want to get all the issues. And I was like, whoa, this is something new. This is a nice, perfect little crossover right here. So, you know, 2 massive storylines in your tenure. And that's just, you know, for under the Spider-Man thing. But what I also find amazing is you're in charge of this juggernaut. You're dealing with hundreds of phone calls every couple of minutes, I can imagine. And you're writing 2 books a month. And in one of the books is one of the most complicated books that there was at the time, which was the Fantastic Four. We've had 60 different plot lines going through every issue. It was absolute. I don't know how you did it. How did you think? How were you able to go home and cut the noise off? Or maybe, you know, maybe you had a really bad phone call during the day. How did you switch that off and then go home and write that fantastic book? And by the way, that Fantastic Four stuff is very special to me. I love that stuff every day.
Well, thank you very much. Working was my drug of choice. That's all I can say is if I had a very frustrating day at the office, I'd go home, you know, get home about 7, 8 o'clock at night, have dinner, and then, you know, go lock myself in the room and write to relax. I, you know, then sleep for, you know, 5 or 6 hours, get up, write in the morning, and then go in and have another fun day at the office. It was a crazy time. I look back on that and I'm thinking, you know, how was I surviving on 5 hours of sleep every night? And, you know, that's, you know, in those days I was like kind of working 7 days a week.
You have a great legacy though, Tom. I know you downplay it and stuff, but you really being so humble and stuff kind of put you, I mean, obviously some bigger personalities like Jim and, you know, they kind of put you a little in the back burner, but you really do have such great legacy and you have a lot of contributions to the industry that is undeniable. And I just, you know, meeting you know, getting into this industry and starting to meeting all the creators and all that, and I gotta attest to you, and I think why people liked you and stuff is you're a genuine person, and you generally wanted what was good for the company and good for the people, and you understood that. I know you say you're lucky, but yeah, there's probably a little luck in there, but you also had the personality where people have been like, you know, I'm sure you didn't have, I'm sure there was a few, but I'm sure you didn't have like a lot of haters and all that stuff and all that. So I'm thinking that you could have went into the position of editor-in-chief where it was like more of a, you know, a guy that's probably more well-liked than other people. So don't ever discredit what you do. Because I think you have a lot of contributing factors, because being an editor-in-chief, you also got to be a people person. And I think you're a people person, Tom. I've seen you dance. I've seen you move. I've seen you groove. You just have that quality, and I think that some are better than others for that, and you do have it. So don't ever sell yourself short. I think you were perfect for it. And there's a reason why Marvel kept going.
Well, you know, John Byrne, when I became editor-in-chief, John Byrne said something about me which I actually really appreciated. And he said, you know, somebody said, well, how do you think DeFalco is going to do? And John said, well, DeFalco is an asshole, but he knows he's an asshole. and as a result, he'll probably do okay. And
says the asshole.
And said, no, no. But I read that and I thought, you know, John kind of nailed it, because you know I don't think I'm a genius. You know, I know that I can be bullheaded and that sort of stuff, but I understand that about me, and I try to listen to what people have to say, because I know I don't have all the answers. So I you know, a lot of times I was just, you know, letting people, you know, solve their own problems. Constantly an editor would come in and say, I have a problem with such and such, and you know, and I'd say, well, imagine you're in total control of this book. What would you do to fix it? And they'd say, well, if I think I'd fire so and so and hire so and so. And I said, well, congratulations, you are in total control of the book. So you got the answer in front of you. Go do what you think you should be doing. And, you know.
Wow. Okay. Wow. All right. We're going to, Steve, you got some last questions for Mr. DeFalco?
Yeah, you know, in a way, I was just thinking, and it's, I would have loved to have had Paul Ryan here, also to talk about the Fantastic Four, the work that you guys did. You know, we've been fortunate before to speak with you and Ron Friends about the Thor. I did manage to spend a lot of time at a convention with Paul, and I talked. I think I talked his ears off. I was just there for hour upon hour telling him how good he was, and you know, I just want to say, you know, during that period, you know, 1991 to 1994, the Fantastic Four for me, and what you did, what you accomplished, rates up there with almost anything that I've read. It was a truly tremendous piece of work, and along with Thor, I have never hated having to wait an entire month like that. It was the most agonizing cliffhangers that have ever been done. I was like, why is it? And they would never finish. The subplots would come and then they'd be like, oh, what's this? What's going on now? So I personally want to thank you so much for the Fantastic Four and Thor, and also steering that ship in a way that I loved and a lot of people of my generation loved. And I just want to make sure to let you know personally, there's a lot of people out there that's their favorite era. It really is.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. We were kind of desperate at the time because sales on the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four was not doing well on the newsstand, and I didn't want to be the editor-in-chief when they took the Fantastic Four off the newsstand. I thought, you know, this is Marvel's first family. So Paul Ryan and I decided we're going to try to do the wildest roller coaster ride we could. And, you know, I had a chart in my room that it would. The main storyline is going this way. This subplot is going that way, and man, it was a nightmare to keep that thing coordinated. And every once in a while, Paul and I would be talking on a regular basis. What new what new left turn can we make here? And it's funny, during that period of time. A lot of people claim they hated the book because we were so mean to the characters. And one guy used to write these reviews every month, ripping it apart. And I said to him, if you don't like the book that much, well, why do you read it every? And he said, well, I have to see what happens next. And he said to me, can't you have a month where nothing happens, but nothing bad happens to the character? And I said, wait a minute, there's 30 days in between each issue where nothing bad happens to the character. But
yes.
We Paul and I had such a great time in that book, and Paul, really one of the most underrated artists in the industry.
Yes.
No matter what ridiculous thing we came up with, hey, we're gonna figure out, inside a door there are the molecules. So you're gonna be traveling between molecules inside a door, and what, all this crazy nonsense that we came up with, and Paul could draw it and make it seem real. We were, I often look at what to me Stan brought to comics. And I think so many people say, he brought characters with feet of clay and continued stories and that sort of stuff. And I think, nah. What Stan's greatest contribution to comic books was, he brought soap opera to superheroes, and he made us care about the characters in their personal lives.
Oh, yeah.
Spider-Man, what we cared about is, Peter's dating life. Was the Thing ever going to get together with Alicia? Was Reed and Sue going to get together? Was the Submariner going to break them up? It was the soap opera that we cared about, and that's what I tried to learn that lesson well.
Mm-hmm. Good. Now, last words for Mr. DeFalco.
Well, I have to say, and these guys can kind of test this, I'm kind of part of that, I want traditional comics back movement. And, I look at the way the industry is now and all the accomplishments that you have done, that you've had as a writer, as a creator, as an editor-in-chief, as an innovator. And I have to say, I personally, and, with speaking with Howard Chaykin and his view on it, I kind of think, that the mainstream comic book industry, I think the indie comic industry is doing good with this, but they've lost focus of their fans. They lost focus of their readers, maintaining, their longtime fans and readers, and not doing a great job of incorporating, as the times change. I think it's sad that, creators like yourself and your other peers, they're not really bringing you guys in to do some stuff or kind of lead the way, because it seems that things are just shrinking so much into what is actually good in comics. And, like you said, comics aren't really, I'm not the audience anymore, which shouldn't be the case, and, I think, we need gentlemen like yourself back in the leadership roles in this industry to really bring back the joy and escapism of comics. Like you said, Stan and them, they brought soap opera. You cared about the comics. I don't want to see people sitting in a coffee shop talking, about personal feelings. you know, I want to fight Galactus, you know, I want to get him off my planet. Like, I just want to have some fun. I mean, we can have some serious moments. There always have been, but it is so, to me, it is just incredibly, I really think it's strange how much comics have drifted away from what superheroes and villains are, you know, and again, you know, we need people like yourself back in this industry, and I don't know if we'll ever get it, but we need you. We need you.
Well, yeah, please don't say that out loud. I can't. I can't put in those kind of hours anymore. I recently did a couple of things for Marvel. They called me and Ron and had us do a 2-part Infinity comic book thing, which is something on the phones. And since I had no idea what it was, I had to accept the assignment because, you know, any challenge, I still like creative challenges.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and and I also, I'm not allowed to talk about it, but I did a 4-issue limited series, which I think is coming out in September, drawn by Pat Olive, and is, I know I get in trouble if I mention it's connected to the original Secret Wars, so I'm not going to do that. But it'll feature Spider-Man, the black costume, the symbiote, and you know, and you know, if you like a slow-moving comic book where people are talking about their feelings and there's no action in the artwork, this is not for you. But if you're looking for, you know, some slam bang hoo-ha action,
yes, hoo-ha.
This is, you know, I remember telling the editor that one of the issues was going to be our talkie issue, and he said, you know, I was waiting for it to slow up. Yeah, but in the middle of the action, the guys did a lot of talking. Because, you know, hey, we're comic books. You can have a fight scene where people are discussing philosophy. Like, you know, those old Thor Hercules battles. You know, they're destroying the city, discussing, you know, what is a hero? What is the purpose of power? I don't care. It's unrealistic. Comics are unrealistic.
Yes.
You know?
And Tom, in ending, why I love you so much is you got such a great personality. There's something about you that no, you really do. You have something that you know, I like. I have a pleasure hanging out with you at shows and all that stuff. I can't get enough. But I think so much attests to it about what you did prior to comics and when you told me what you did prior to comics. I think the world should know this, that why don't you tell what you were trying to get into prior to comics, but it did not work out and you become this legend in comics. But what were you going to be? Because you would have been great at parties and it's your life.
Yeah, I at one point I was thinking of going to clown college, you know, because they had that Ringling Brothers Clown College, and I thought, yeah, you know, I could learn to do that sort of thing. I always knew I was going to be a writer, but I thought I was going to be more like Edgar Rice Burroughs, because when I was growing up, there were only 2 good comic book writers. There was Stan Lee and Robert Kanigher, and as I grew older, then the next generation came in. The really great guys like Roy and Denny O'Neil and, you know, Steve Gerber. I mean, you know, those guys came in and like, hey, wait a minute, maybe there is a place for me. But, you know, I kept thinking, yeah, I'm going to mainly be a humor writer. And I owe my superhero career to Joe Orlando. Because at one point, Joe Orlando said to me, kid, you ever think about writing some of the straight stuff? And I said to him, Joe, I love reading that, but it looks so hard. I don't think I can do it. And he says, no, come on. He says, you got to be able to plot a story. You can do that. You got to be able to, you know, do real characterization. You can do that. He says, and here's the kicker. It doesn't have to be funny. they're paying you the same rate and you're only doing half the work. and I thought, wait a minute, that's right. If it doesn't have to be funny, that's at least half the work. I thought, well, yeah, maybe I'll try doing straight stuff. And if Joe Orlando hadn't given me that pep talk, who knows where I'd be.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have been a great what if story. What if Tom DeFalco became the clown?
in many regards, many people think I still am that clown.
So, Tom, thank you so much for being on here. Once again, happy birthday. We're glad. I'm glad you're back on the convention scene, and I'm glad you and Ron are doing your stuff. I love seeing you out there, and it's always a pleasure. I'm glad. I want you for another 450. You look, like I said, I know you had some little health problems, but now you're back. You're strong. You got your power cosmic filled back up, and I'm like I said, I'm so happy you're back out there, and I'm glad the fans get to see you because you're one of the good guys that that truly love the business and that you give that back to the fans, and that's always good because sometimes you got these people, some creators, they got their heads up their butt and stuff, and they like to be from a distance, but you're one of those guys that I really appreciate seeing it out there because even you don't remember this, but you were at a show in Framingham when I was young, and I remember asking, that book, a book came out or something, and I don't know, you took some time to talk to me about it, and I must have been like 15 years old and something. So, and I just remember you talking to me, and I just thought that was special. I kind of knew of you. I think you were editor-in-chief at that time too, and you were at a show, but despite your position, you were still like, you took the time to talk to me, and then I wasn't the only one, and you were talking to other people. So I'm just saying that's why it's great to have you out there. You're an ambassador for this stuff, and you're one of the ones that everybody sees. So I love you, man. I love you.
I appreciate it. Listen, I love the medium. I just love the medium. And I'm so thankful to the fans because if it hadn't been for the fans, I would have had to have a real job. And I'm still like, a fan geek myself because, I get a thrill when I get to see Roy because, I look at Roy and I think, Stan, co-created the characters and set up the universe. But, Roy is the one who taught us all how to write because we all write a lot more like Roy than we do than Stan. And, and I think, there's a guy who, to me is the epitome of what we should aspire to because, a talented guy, he remembers everything. He knows everything. I'm aside from Stan, I probably have the worst memory in comics, but,
Yeah.
But when we talk of the greats, I think the greats are guys like Roy, Denny O'Neil,
mm-hmm.
And Tom DeFalco.
I don't put DeFalco up with that crew,
Yeah.
But
so are you saying William Shatner's chopped liver?
Oh, yeah. That was and look at the shirt. Look at the shirt.
Yeah.
One more time now.
Yeah.
Look at the shirt. Hey,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Tom. First time I saw that Marvel Tales and I saw that Spider-Ham, I bought that right off the rack because I thought that was so innovative. So it just worked. It just worked. Okay, right before we let you go, can you tell me the creation of Spider-Ham? I would like to know.
The creation of Spider-Ham, I was sitting in Larry Hama's office, and Larry and I were, often, coming up with all sorts of craziness, Machine Man and all sorts of stuff. And around that time, the comic book retailers were always afraid Marvel was going to open their own stores because they couldn't understand the difference between retail and publishing. Larry and I were kind of laughing because we had been to Disneyland, Disney World. We had seen the Disney stores. We said, yeah, Marvel can never open its own stores because at that time we didn't really have clothing licenses. We had one guy publishing T-shirts, Comic Images. I think it was that would publish T-shirts. And Larry said, yeah, and really, what really sells in those stores are plush. And he says, and we'll never have plush, unless you have funny animals. And off the top of my head, I said, you mean like Peter Porker Spider-Ham? And Larry shot back something. No, I was thinking more Goose Rider. And the two of us just kept coming up with stupid animal names for our characters. And somebody came to the door and was listening to us crack these stupid jokes at each other and said, is that a new book you're doing? And Larry and I looked at each other and said, yeah. And we put together a new project memo for this thing. We walked in, we gave it to Shooter, and Shooter just looked at it and said, "What, you guys had, are you out of your mind?" That was really want
God, that's been intimidating.
And Shooter just approved it, and then Larry and I we kicked in $100 each, and because he knew somebody who made dolls, and he made a Peter Porker doll. So we did the comic book. We got the doll made, and we when the comic book came out, we walked up to the licensing office and said, "Hey, have we got a great idea for you?" And the guy in charge of licensing looked at us and said, "Get the hell out of my office." He says, "You can't license Spider-Man. How am I going to license a Spider Pig?" And we walked out, and I thought that was the end of it. And then a bunch of months later, Shooter calls me into his office. He says, "The president wants to see you."
Uh-oh.
And I said, "Why?" He says, "It's your mess. Go clean it up." And I figured, well, I must have done something. So I go up, and Mr. Galton is there, and he says to me, "Oh, Tom, come on in. I want to introduce you to Joe Welsh, the guy who was distributing our comic books." And I thought, why am I meeting our distributor? And Mr. Welsh looks and he goes, "Do you know anything about a title called Marvel Tales?" And I go, "Oh yeah, it's a monthly book. It's a reprint title that reprints old Spider-Man stories." And he goes, No, I know that Marvel Tales. I'm talking TAILS. And I think, uh-oh. It's so close. It didn't occur to me. We screwed up the distribution. And I said, yeah, it's a one-shot featuring Peter Porker, Spider-Ham. And Mr. Gold goes, "You made a Spider Pig?" Yes, Mr. Galton. And Joe Welsh says, "It sold 63% on the newsstand." And Golden says to me, "When's the next issue coming out?" I said, "Oh, Mr. Golden, it was just a one shot. There is no next issue." And the distributor goes, "It sold 63% on the newsstand." And Galton says, "So when's the next issue coming out?" It was a one shot. And says in a louder voice, "It sold 63% on the newsstand." And Jim Galton looks at me and says, "Tom, you're not hearing me. When's the next issue coming out?" Suddenly the light bulb goes, "In about 3 months, sir." Then
he pull out, "Can we get our doll?"
And he goes, "Pleasure doing business with you, sir." And I walk out, and I went down to Larry and said, "Hey, here's the good news. We're going to do some more Peter Porker, and you're going to edit it."
Awesome. I bought them, and I bought the issues when they came out. I have no idea why. I'm not an animal type person. I never liked Looney Tunes, but I fell for it. I have the Hulk Bunny. I have no idea why. But
listen, you know,
thank you for.
Steve Skates wrote those books. He did a fabulous job. Very annoying. He did a much better job than I could have done. I've never forgiven him for that, but he did a fabulous job.
Yeah. Well, thank you once again, Tom, so much for being here. A happy birthday, happy late birthday and stuff. And once again, it's always our honor to have you here. And I can't wait to see you on the field because we love you. All right, Steve, get us out of here.
Thank you, Tom. Been a pleasure as always. Boom!
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on Pop XP. If you haven't already, make sure to click that subscribe button and also click the bell for notifications when we go live and we upload some awesome new content. Also, don't forget to head on over to Twitter and follow us at the Pop XP and over on Instagram at the Pop XP. Thanks again everyone, and we'll see you soon.